the air on for you. It's class. No, it was a miracle. Can you hear me?
It's a Christmas miracle.
It's a cider day miracle.
It's a cider day miracle.
It's beautiful. Wow. Thank you for accidentally stumbling in off the street. We are Prefer Not To.
Yes.
I am Josh.
I'm Kate.
This year's Kate. I should have learned in 2 years not to hit the table when you record things or do this. We are a weekly cocktail hour podcast every week. Mostly weekly, right?
Yes.
Every week, Kate and I get a cocktail and we look at it and try to find something nice to say about it or something about cocktail culture or drinking culture. Then we watch a movie and try to find something nice to say about that because there's too many people saying bad things about movies on the internet. I don't know if you picked up on that.
Yes.
And sometimes with the movies we watch, it's difficult because they're not necessarily the very best of movies. Hey, how you doing, Kate?
I'm good. How are you?
It's our second year here.
I know. This is our second time. Shout out to DSI for having us back.
Yeah,
What?
shout out. Seriously, a local joke who were great. Go check out their show. I saw Gretchen last year. She's hilarious. So you guys should totally stick around for her and Sarah Benakaza, who was the only guest we ever had on our show and was a patient saint while we figured out how to use Skype.
Yes.
Which any 60-year-old grandfather already knows how to use.
Yes.
So please stay for Gretchen and Sarah. They're both way better than us. Way.
It's
so,
true.
like I said, every week we talk about a cocktail or a drink and look at a movie. However, this week we're a little short. I don't know if you picked up on that. We usually do an hour-long show. When we go to a half hour, so we're just going to stick to the drink this week. Is that okay, Kate?
That's fine by me,
That's right.
Josh.
And what are we doing? What are we drinking this week?
We are discussing hard cider.
How fortuitous! $4 at the bar special tonight on ciders. They're delicious drinks.
They are very delicious.
They are delicious drinks. But before we do talk about the ciders, I do need to do our standard disclaimer.
Right.
Which is that alcoholism is a serious disease. If you had core rot or mottled leaf or finchy fruit or
Sorry, what?
blackened branch
I'm sorry.
disease. What?
Do those apply to humans at all, or are those just?
No, those are apple diseases. Those are diseases
they're
that
apple
apple tree
diseases.
get.
Okay.
And if you were an apple tree and you had core rot, you would see an arborist. If you were a human and you had core rot, you would see a psychiatrist probably. And if you have alcoholism, you should probably see a professional too because, hey, use science to your advantage in beating a disease that is pretty well undefeated against humans without assistance.
Yes.
So yeah, that said, hey, cider.
Yeah.
So I had nothing to do, by the way, because Kate does the drink parts of the show, and I do the stupid movie parts of the show that are like the last half hour that you listen to when you've already been jogging and you're sweating and you don't really want to listen to this part of the show.
You're just coasting on this
and
part.
where they like read viewer mail and they do their social media addresses and they talk about some Kickstarter that they're going to or something like that. So I do that stuff. Kate does the stuff that's actually good. I do the bad stuff. So I needed something to do for the show tonight.
Yes.
So I got a little visual cues going. So you'll crane your neck to look at the TVs behind you. Oh, here we spoiled our first visual cue.
It's okay. It'll work out.
We got a little picture pages program to go with the show tonight. So hey, tell us a little bit about cider and why we have this strange mottled look. He has mottled core.
He just got mottled core.
There's some mottled core going on right there.
So we're going to talk.
Screen.
We're going to talk about cider. For the purposes of this discussion, I want to get something out of the way at the beginning, which is that in most of the world, cider means hard cider. In America, you have to specify that it has booze in it. So for the purposes of the show, and when I say cider, it means it's got devil juice in it, all right?
So let me ask you, let me back up on you. So like I go into the teat, right? I go over into the Harris Teeter, and I got the big, the glass jug of Mott's apple juice.
Yes.
Right, and then right next to it, there's the big glass jug of Mott's apple cider.
Yeah.
Right, and one is just milkier than the other.
Yes.
Like that's the only difference. It's like pulpy orange juice and not pulpy orange juice.
Yeah, you've got apple juice, which is like non-pulped orange juice, and then your apple cider is the chunky, disgusting stuff that is not pasteurized, and so it's kind of
chunk shame the cider.
You're right. I'm sorry, cider, inanimate object.
Doesn't care. It's loaded.
So Can we talk about cider?
Yeah, sure. I thought we were.
Yeah, we're going to talk about cider.
right.
So apple cider is actually one of America's oldest beverages. It was very, very popular up until the early 20th century in America, more so than beer.
Can you think of any Revolutionary War heroes who might have drunk apple cider?
I can. One of them is John Adams.
Oh, look. Oh, hey, look. We have a picture.
Oh, hey, look. It's John Adams.
The only known photo of second president of the United States, John Adams.
John Adams likes
That's
cider.
not John Adams. That is beloved character actor Paul Giamatti, starring in the
Ruining
HBO
the
miniseries
illusion.
John Adams. But it's great because now every time they turn on their TV and they see beloved character actor Paul Giamatti, which frankly, let's be honest, is 12 out of 24 hours, they're going to think about our show.
So, fun fact, John Adams drank a glass of cider every single morning to settle his stomach, even when he was president of the United States.
I would add that he was our first one-term president.
He was actually also our first one-term president. So cider is extremely popular in America, so much so, like our founding father there,
Founding father Paul Giamatti.
Founding father Paul Giamatti drinks a glass of it every morning to this day. Actually, during the Battle of Lexington and Concord, there was a local crazy man named Elias Brown who, in a pause during the fight between the colonists and the British, grabbed a jug of cider and went out and sold it to both sides to make money. So
and that is the American can-do spirit.
That is an American can-do spirit.
First of all,
if I ever heard one.
war profiteering.
Yes.
Second of all, not really caring about selling things to the enemy.
Nope.
Sure.
It's just making your money. And then, actually, cider was so popular that one of our presidents, William Henry Harrison, used it as a touchstone of his campaign.
We have a picture of William Henry Harrison. If you can pull
Do we?
that up, yeah. This is picture number 2. Picture number 2.
There
we go. There's young Tippecanoe.
I don't think that's accurate at all.
That is pixel accurate face of young William Henry Harrison.
I'm sorry. Can we just talk about it? This Young Patriot series, meaning it's for children,
right, sure.
but it's unabridged.
Well, sure.
Can we talk about that for a second?
Some kids want to read the footnotes.
Okay.
Yeah, I just love his strangely adult face sort of grafted onto that drawing. It's clear someone had like an adult painting of Tippecanoe and then just sort of traced it onto generic toe-headed mule-riding boy.
Well, I think that's a horse. But okay, so
oh yeah, that's not fair. I don't want to horse shame him.
No. So William Henry Harrison actually used cider in his campaign. He portrayed himself as this guy who lived in a log cabin and drank cider. It was a very populous drink, and that's what won him the election. So I mean, can you imagine?
So it was like today where people were like, I want a candidate I can have a beer with.
Except it's I want to have a candidate I can have a hard cider with. I mean, a cider with.
Right, because they didn't have the milky stuff.
No. And for instance, in 1841, the average person in Massachusetts was drinking 35 gallons of cider a year.
And this is before the Boston Bruins existed, so there's really no excuse.
There's no excuse. So why is it so popular in America? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One is that, wine is fussy and hard to produce. Beer is also fussy and hard to produce.
Yeah, does anyone here speak French? Did anyone take French? This is actually something seriously that I needed to know, and I'm going to exploit DSI's stage to find out the answer. Nobody took French. There's that word for like wine. You have to have a certain kind of soil to grow it. Terroir, like terroir or whatever it is. No one speaks. Oh, you people are useless. No. Please love us.
Please love us. Laugh at our jokes. And also, the colonists that lived in New Jersey during the pre-revolutionary period were paid to build roads in barrels of apple jack, which is a type of apple cider.
Tell me we're going to talk about Applejack later in the show.
We're going to calm down. We're going to talk about Applejack. Don't worry.
Applejack.
Applejack's our favorite. It's like I prefer not to. Boom. So, we have a picture.
Oh yeah, the third picture. This is a picture of a catalog from the 19th century of home cider presses that you could buy. And my favorite part of this one is a small size for family use. And you can just picture like the whole family gathered around the press making booze. And it's a heartwarming image.
Well, and the thing about cider is it's actually relatively very low alcohol content, so it was appropriate for children to drink.
Right, and it was one of those things back then. Like, water could kill you.
Yes.
It had like dysentery and crap in it.
Very much so. And actually, there's a subtype of cider called cider kin that is for children. So it's booze.
Wait, it's
for kids.
Like it's kin to cider.
Yeah, I guess cider kin, like KIN. Yeah.
That sounds like a Tumblr group.
So what happened to cider in America? That's a really good question.
What happened?
That I'm
Kate,
glad you guys asked.
Kate, what happened? Kate, what happened to cider in America?
Well, let me tell you, Josh. So, like a lot of things in cocktail history and booze history in general, it begins and ends with Prohibition, which was something that happened in the, beginning of the 20th century.
Yeah, that is something that we've learned is that in researching the history of almost any booze in America, there is a big, bright, shining line around Prohibition between back then and back now. And everything changed. Like, people were actually drinking cider. It wasn't like just a weird hipster thing or people with gluten problems.
Yeah. So, during Prohibition, there's a couple things. One, when you're going to be plying an illegal trade of any kind, it's actually faster, cheaper, and just all around more economical to use liquor.
Right, because it's high booze content. It's like crack versus pot. I'm just saying, like, if you're going to move something, like, if your number one goal is just to get fucked up, you can carry 18 doses of, it's like very small as opposed to lots of pot.
So liquor's cheaper to make.
Liquor is easier to move.
It's easier to make. It's easier to hide. No one, it's not like if you have this like vast field of apple-bearing orchard trees, you're like, no, officer, I swear, it's not what it looks like, right. As opposed to the still that you can hide in your basement and make like, basically gin out of.
And table apples and cider apples don't look super different, right?
No, they don't, but there is a difference that we're going to get into. It's also easier and cheaper, and you get more drunk on liquor than you would on cider. So it's kind of the
point that I make that you frowned at. The point is that I love crack.
Also, so during this time period, cider apple trees are what were replaced with actual table apple trees. So, like the name suggests, table apples are what you would get at the supermarket. It's what you eat on your table. And
one of the great things about apples is that they're such a vigorous hybrid history plant. They're like the original genetically modified plant. We sort of essentially, as a species, created apples out of nothing. If you go to picture 4 of what the original apple species looks like. These still grow like over in Afghanistan. And those things are like the size of big olives. They're not really, and they're super bitter.
Yeah, they're not sweet
over the
at all.
course of centuries, we created apples out of that.
Yeah. So those types of apples get replaced with the table apples. People generally stop paying attention to cider because the same type of people that were drinking cider are the same type of people that were in favor of Prohibition in the first place. Wasps.
Well, no, it's true because, wine and beer were for, Central European Catholic types.
And Prohibition was
Germans and Italians.
And Prohibition was favored by Southern religious folk and the Northern waspy types. Protestants. Let's just be real. And actually, after Prohibition, a thing about it is that there's a lot of really weird tax laws on the production of cider. No one knows if cider is a beer or if it's a wine. If it's a wine, it has to be taxed this way. If it's a beer, it's taxed this way. Anything in a batch of apples could affect how much money the government gets off of it, including how much carbonation is in it or how much booze is in it. And because apples change
the
with every
carbonation laws
batch.
were like because of champagne, right? They were worried about importing champagne, so they put.
So the
weird laws
government
on
had a weird
carbonation.
law on carbonation for booze because they didn't want to compete with French champagne makers during Prohibition. So it's like an archaic leftover. It's like whatever Frenchies like, and then actually alcohol content is another big thing, but. Every batch of cider differs in its alcohol content because every apple differs in the amount of sugar it has.
Right.
Because apples are so extremely heterozygous that every single apple that is born, that it reproduces, is different.
Right. That's why when you have an apple orchard, they make apples from grafting branches onto the trees instead of planting them from seeds, which is why Johnny Appleseed was completely useless. Because the stuff he was planting, he had no idea whether it was going to be any good.
No.
So Kate, what kind of apples are there?
Well, there's a couple of different types of apples.
We've got some.
That one.
Okay, so here, this is my tour de force part of the show.
So that's
we got pictures for the kind of apples. Okay, so what's the first kind of apple, Kate?
Okay, so the best cider making apples are split up into 5 categories. The first one is a sweet apple.
Let's look at the sweet. That's sweet apples.
That's not an apple.
That is sweet apples.
That is in fact the breakfast cereal Apple Jacks.
Sure, but they'll remember now. See, it's all about mnemonics. They remember they're sweet apples.
Okay, all right. Let's yes and life. Okay, so if you eat a sweet apple, this is what you find at the grocery store. This is your gala. This is your pink lady. It's like eating a sugar cube in terms of palate.
And bread to be bitten into and eaten.
What?
I said bread to be bitten into and
Yes.
eaten.
Okay, and our next type of apple that makes good cider is the sharp apple. Do we have a picture?
Yeah,
of
and
that,
it's the next picture. It's gonna be the sharp apple.
do we have a? Okay.
It's an apple with a knife. He's an apple and he's got a knife. He's a sharp apple.
Wow. Okay, so that's not the
Get it,
picture
Kate?
of a Granny Smith apple that I asked you to
Get
get for the show,
It's a
which is
sharp
an
apple.
example of a sharp apple, but okay. A sharp apple's kind of like
You were
eating
killing him. I had to give him some laughs. This is a sharp apple.
sure, okay. Oh my god. Okay. This is a nightmare. A sharp apple is like it's like eating a lemon is what it's like, not that. Okay. So next type of apple is I hesitate, a sharp sweet apple is good for cider.
It's National Treasure Bonnie Hunt.
That's not
Because she's
that's
sharp and she's sweet. She's sharp and sweet. She's National Treasure Bonnie Hunt. Now every time they see Bonnie Hunt, they're going to think of our show.
Okay, because you see her so much these days.
It's all about piggyback. Hey. When you're a
And
national treasure, you can throw shade on Bonnie Hunt.
And a sharp sweet apple that is not Bonnie Hunt, but let's just go with it, is like, if you have a lemon that has been dipped in sugar and you put it in your mouth. Like, it's like that nice little like lemon drop kind of tart sweet thing. Now, I need you guys to bear with me. The fourth type of apple
Promise this one's going to be okay.
is
Seriously, it's going to be fine.
a bittersweet apple.
Okay, let's pull up the bittersweet apple. It's terms of endearment.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, what?
Because it's funny. It's like a Jim Brooks movie, but then she dies at the end.
Did you just...
I just spoiled terms of endearment, by the way.
I'm sorry. Did you just discover Google Image like this morning? Like, what is wrong with you?
I'm
One job.
43. Cut me some slack, man.
Okay, all right. We're going to keep...
Okay.
We're gonna,
terms of endearment is great. You guys should see it.
Wow. Okay. So a sharp sweet apple is like drinking. It's very tannin heavy. It's like drinking a cup of tea black tea that's been sitting steeping for 10 minutes. So, it's very like, bleh,
I'm not sure you're going to like this next one.
So, guys, we've got our sweet apple. We've got sharp sweet. We've got bittersweet. We have anybody? Bitter sharp.
Yeah,
That's the last type of apple.
Okay, so that's noted red baiter Roy Cohn on the left there, who you may remember then got HIV and transformed into Al Pacino. You'll see him with his lifelong friend, a very young Donald Trump, over there on the right. Donald Trump and Roy Cohn were buddies. Just remember that when you go to the polls in November.
I'm sorry.
Donald Trump was buddies with Roy Cohn.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry.
And he was bitter. He was bitter and sharp and not at all sweet. So that's why you get Roy Cohn.
Can you, okay, this guy.
I don't know who
Roy
the guy
Cohn-
in the middle is. He looks really happy to be with Roy Cohn.
That's not
though.
important. What's important here is that you are like hijacking our show with these kinds of images here. And I just want to point out that Roy Cohn was enough of an asshole in real life. Just like let the dead die, man.
Well, I mean, he had HIV. Don't beat up on him. Plus, he inspired like one of the great works of American literature. So, okay, put up the next picture. It's just
put up the next
picture. Put it there. Kate will get what she wants. See there. Are you happy now?
Okay, so those are actual cider apples.
those
That's
are
what
cider.
we've been trying to communicate this entire time. So good
you happy?
good job.
Are you happy?
Yes, I'm very happy. Also, a bitter sharp apple, by the way, is like a black tea that has been coated in lemon juice. It's disgusting. And they're also called spitters because the ideal type of cider apple...
Now you're regretting pulling the Roy Cohn picture down.
The ideal type of apple that you use in cider is actually the kind that is the most disgusting to eat. Right. They are called spitters because you spit them out of your mouth.
Because it would have been pointless to make apples that nobody can
And
eat.
that's the thing, is nobody wanted to eat the apple, so we might as well turn it into booze. You take your mash and your whatever, and you make it into this, take this withered...
Wow, I am moving this table like great. You guys, it was suspense for you guys, wasn't it? You didn't want to warn me. You were just waiting.
So I just want to comment on the everlasting ingenuity and tenacity of the human spirit. We take this withered, disgusting, bitter-tasting, hard thing, and we make it rot, and then we put it in our bodies.
Yep.
And that makes sense to people.
And it was delicious.
And it's delicious.
And not only that, I'm sure people died along the way eating rotten food until they found the ones that were good and boozy.
That's true. That's very true.
So,
Speaking of...
every time you have a drink, remember all those people who ate spoiled meat thinking, well, if grapes spoil and make booze, why on earth wouldn't spoiled ham make a delicious drink? I am sure there was some guy in like Neolithic times who was like, listen, guys, seriously, the spoiled grapes are delicious. Let's have spoiled ham juice.
Gosh. You know what I just thought of?
What?
This cider is really good.
It is delicious. I hope everyone has gone to the bar and purchased one, which is on special at $4, or does so on the way out.
I'm going to say, cider, it turns out, is quite delicious, and it's available for $4 at the bar. Yeah. Everybody here, I know you already know that because you've already bought your cider for the evening, but I just want to point it out one more time.
Right, with $4. With number, I got this one's a pear cider. Did you know they made pear ciders?
Mm-hmm.
They made pear ciders. You got an apple one there?
I got an apple cider here, yep.
Boy, yeah.
All right.
If I didn't have one, I would be thoroughly jealous of me and go right to the bar and buy one.
Right to the bar and buy it for $4. It's only $4, people.
So we're going to talk about Applejack at all? Because that's my favorite part of the show. That's all I was waiting for.
Because America is America, there's a couple different ways. Once you take cider is not enough. You know, it's a low alcohol content, usually around like 3%. America... You can make it boozier. And one of our own...
That should be on the flag. America, you can make it boozier.
One of our own homegrown native products is Applejack, which is a type of apple brandy. Excuse me. So it's... what happens when you take cider and you put it in a barrel and you leave it outside all winter and it freezes?
You guys know how like regular liquors get made, right? Like you have a mash of... like if it's vodka, it's what? It's potatoes, right? If it's gin, it's what? Juniper berries, right. And if it's whiskey, it's corn or rye. So you take this slurry and you let it spoil, and it turns into like an alcoholic mash, and then you heat it up, and the alcohol vaporizes at a slightly lower temperature than the water, and then you run it through. By the way, I'm telling you how to be a hillbilly. And then you run it through some pipes, and then the pipes get cold, and then it condenses it, and then it drips out at the end, and then you put it in a big jug that has 3 X's on it, and you get Junior Johnson to drive it over to Wilkesboro. But Applejack is made in a little bit of a different method. It's made in a cold distilling method.
Yeah, so Applejack's most commonly produced in freeze distillation, which is when you take you take your apple mash that you have and you put it in a barrel, and then you sit it outside all winter and you wait for it to freeze. And as it freezes, the alcohol rises and you collect it, and then you add more frozen to it. And
you just keep freezing
chip
until you
away
have like
the
a
ice
hunk of water
until you have a hunk of water at the bottom, and you've got something that went from being like 3% ABV to like 20 proof. And that is what Applejack is. It's delicious, by the way.
And it's used in one of the 6 basic cocktails, according to David Embry, the author of a book whose name I can never remember. What is it?
The Fine Art of Mixing Drinks.
The Fine Art of Mixing Drinks. There's 6 basic cocktails. I'm never going to remember these. There's the martini.
All right, hold on. All right, so when you think of the 6 basic cocktails, I'm just curious, what do you guys think they would be? Like, according to like the martini. Good.
I gave you that one, Mom.
And what? A Rick? No, that's
a good guess.
Old fashioned. Boom. Boom. Number 2.
Wow, my mom, the lush, coming through. No. Okay, so we got old fashions, and we got
martinis.
The other ones are. Let me see if I can remember. There's daiquiris. There's a Manhattan is one of them. The daiquiri for some reason is one
because they had to put rum in there.
And then there's the Jack Rose, which is a drink nobody has and nobody makes because it's made out of Applejack, and it is wonderful. So if you get anything out of this show as we wrap up for the show, that is a common thread in our show, which is we go to see these movies, and they're not necessarily great movies. And there's a lot of podcasts on the internet that pick on bad movies. It's very easy to do. We set ourselves the task of looking at movies that we might have missed and finding something to enjoy out of them. We watched a really weird movie called Wolfen from 1980 the other day that features Albert Finney as a New York police detective investigating werewolves. I highly recommend it.
Butch New York detective.
But the point being, seek out some things that might be good and that people forgot about for no reason, like the incredibly wonderful Jack Rose.
Yes, and apple cider, which is on its way back thanks to President Obama, who signed the Cider Act, which is coming into effect on December 31st of this year, which will raise and take off taxes off of your local cider producers. So maybe we'll get a huge apple boom.
That'll be nice. So, hey, do we got anything else to talk about cider? Can I leave them with our last image?
Yes.
Okay, so...
Oh, no. I don't want to... What is it?
I got one. So we got one more image that has absolutely nothing to do with cider, and I promise it has nothing to do with cider, but this is going to be the next movie that we do for the show. So, I'm going to tease them with something. So now that they got, they'll see Bonnie Hunt, they'll watch, Jerry Maguire, and they'll be like, I got to watch that podcast because we are watchable. I got to listen to the podcast. So the next movie we're going to do is going to be a movie. It's called Ironclad, starring Paul Giamatti. And this image is what I want you to take in your head. That is the image that I want you to get. So thank you very much, guys. We would prefer not to. I hope you had a good time.
Thank you so much for having us.